Hey, everybody. Well, I guess it's good afternoon now on the East Coast. It is April the 4th, 2022. This is Bob Wheeler from ClearedJobs.Net, and we're running our Military Monday here today. So we're going to talk about some tips for transitioning veterans. We like to do this on a Monday at least once a month, typically on the first half of the month. And today we're going to be talking about job fairs. That's going to be the focus of today's chat, a little bit about how to use job fairs for your military transition. At the end of our discussion, too, we're going to jump into some resume reviews. So we always get some resumes, and we're going to look at two resumes today at the end of this discussion. We're going to kind of critique them for their goods and their bads. These are actually some pretty good resumes, but we still got some tips. But we're going to be using actual people's resumes, real resumes that have been submitted by people, so that we're looking at stuff. One of the things that we do here at ClearedJobs.net when we do our Military Mondays is we try to provide good advice. And what I mean by that is, good advice is the kind of thing that works for most of the people most of the time. So as you're going through your military transition, you're going to get so many different tips on how to do this and how to do that. And someone's going to say, well, I did it this way and they did it that way. Just remember, good advice is for most of the people most of the time. We are going to try to be as specific as we can about the military transition, though, because I know that that's part of that unique piece that people have when they're getting out. That the general job seeking advice is not the same as a for somebody coming out of high school or college as it is for somebody coming out of the military who'd been in for 5, 10, or 25 years or something like that. So today's topic is job fairs. Um, and I know the first question everybody always wants to ask about job fairs is, when should I attend my first job fair? Um, we're going to talk a little bit about not just when. We're going to address that. We're going to start off by addressing it pretty quickly too. But after we talk about that, we're going to talk about a few other things about what to do at the job fair, how to follow up, and stuff like that. But when people talk about when should I attend my first job fair, um, you know, that's related to a lot of different things. But let's start too with what kind of job fairs there are. Even though we weren't talking about the when, what kind of job fairs are out there? First of all, in-person job fairs are what you probably remember. That's what the types of things you think about. But especially after the pandemic, there's lots of virtual job fairs as well. So there's in-person versus virtual events. When you go to an in-person event, the what you're going to see there is you're going to see more people that you can talk to. What I mean by that is you can see recruiters, but also more operations people and hiring managers. It's a great way to have that face-to-face conversation and really understand what's going on. So that's the big benefit of the in-person event. It also helps you to network and also to kind of get you out of your comfort zone of the military and get you starting thinking about being a civilian. Now, the virtual events, they can be great too. Virtual events, you submit your resume, you log on, and different platforms are out there. But you'll chat with some recruiters or people, or maybe you may even do a phone or a video interview during the chat based or the virtual interviews. But so the positives of that is you can reach lots of different companies. Those companies can reach lots of different places. So if you're stuck in Fort Huachuca, Arizona, or if you're in Alaska or Okinawa, Japan, or something like that, you can start to do those things that you can't do at the in-person events. So that's a positive. One of the negatives is you really don't get the same feel for all the companies as much. And you one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they do virtual events is they don't visit all the different booths. So that's one of the differences between the events, virtual versus in person. Something else to think about is niche versus a general job fair. So a niche job fair can be anything. All it means is specific. Like ClearedJobs.net events, first of all, they're specific to people with security clearances, but we even do some events that are specific to what types of clearance. We have some events that are just for the full scope and CI poly people. We have some events that are just for cybersecurity talent. It can also be specific to location. When you do an in-person event, it's going to be very specific to that location. So if an event that's in St. Louis or in Tampa or in San Antonio, you're going to see people looking to find those jobs there. Um, Now, if you're a transitioning veteran and you're in a place like, Northern Virginia, and you go to a Northern Virginia job fair, you can expect to see people talk about those types of jobs. But you may not want to do that. You may want to be someplace, in San Antonio, for example. So going to a job fair in San Antonio, you're going to meet more local people. This kind of ties in too with the difference between smaller, like on post job fairs, versus the bigger job fairs. I was just recently at a job fair in Camp Lejeune area, North Carolina. Lots of those companies that were there were hiring for jobs just in there, and they also don't, excuse me, they don't send as many recruiters. The companies don't send as many recruiters to those events. They send a lot more hiring managers and program managers because those are the people who are already there. They're in that location. So that's the value of going to a specific job fair like on post or in that area. And that also means if you're a transitioning veteran to start thinking about where do I want to be for my last duty station, because your last duty station is going to really affect the types of opportunities that you have. So now we've talked a little bit about the types of job fairs that are out there because they're all a little bit different. So all these pieces of advice are going to apply a little bit differently. But when we start talking about when should I start applying, going to my first job fairs, I tell you, it kind of goes down to the win is also what are you going to do with it, that opportunity. If you're 12 months from your EAS, the primary things that you're looking for at a job fair is career intel and networking. You're going there because you want to talk to people, you want to learn about the companies, you want to just practice being a civilian. You want to practice being Bob Wheeler and not being Chief Petty Officer Wheeler type thing. You can be out there for the networking piece. So when you're about a year out, I absolutely go to, especially those in-person events. Go to those events. There's a lot less pressure because you don't need a job right away. It's better to, opening day of baseball seasons this week. You get spring training first, right? Go out there, take some batting practice first with your career before you have to go out there feeling like, oh my goodness, I got to find a job to supply, feed my family before I get out of the military next month. So when you're 12 months out, start looking at those things. When you get to be about 3 months out, now you can start going out there. You're going to those job fairs more for results, and it becomes a lot easier at this 3 month part if you've been doing those things for the last 9 months, hitting a few job fairs here and there. Because now when it really matters, now when the game's on the line, you've practiced more, you feel more comfortable. So those are the types of things that you look at for like why should you go and when should you go. That's the big piece of what should you do while you're there. Looking around, when I talk to people, this is something that when I talk to people at job fairs all the time, we go to, um, I was one, our previous in-person event right before the pandemic, and I was speaking with a gentleman who was a super smart, very qualified. He was a Navy captain, '06 type. Coming out of the Navy, he had been a Naval Academy graduate too. And so as we talked, it was like, it was funny for him to realize that he hadn't basically had to apply for a job since he applied for the Naval Academy. Coming out of high school, he put his service academy package together, and then for the next 25 or whatever years, he never had to apply for a job. So this as smart as he was this brilliant man with lots of experience. The job seeking part was something brand new to him. So getting out there and just breaking that rust off or just learning how to do things is so important. Um, so now, other questions people say is, what should I wear to a job fair? Is it okay if I wear my uniform? That's probably the biggest question that people ask transitioning veterans when they say, "What should I wear?" And I tell people if it's a job fair that's on post, or if you can only wear your uniform, that's fine. If you're wearing your service uniform or whatever the appropriate uniform of the day is, and you're allowed to wear that uniform, off base, yeah, that's fine to do that. But I don't suggest it necessarily. I do suggest wearing civilian attire. If suits are great, if you can get a suit, good. If you can't get a suit, get a jacket and tie, or at least a tie. And again, the longer out you have, if you're still a year out from EAS, maybe all you've got is just a jacket and tie. You haven't got yourself a full suit yet. No worries. But I do suggest that you try to wear civilian attire when you go there, because it does a few things. One, it gets you out of the thing of thinking about your rank. That's the biggest thing. It helps you let go. It also helps you really remind yourself that no kidding, you're going to get out. This is kind of like a finality thing. It says, what, no kidding, I'm going to be out of the military at such and such a date. That's just the fact. Um, and I think that really just helps change your attitude and helps change your mind a little bit. Um, when you're doing those things. So when you're doing this, wear your civilian attire. Couple things, do not mix and match uniform parts with civilian attire. This is not a time to skimp and say, well, I don't have any dress shoes, so let me wear my Corps Frams from my Marine Corps dress uniform. Don't do that. If that's all you've got, then stick to the uniform piece. But you should try to get some good, appropriate civilian attire, and don't worry about that. If you're a 25-year-old person coming out of the military, you were in for 4 years, and all you've got is just a button-up shirt, that's fine. You know, but as you get to be more senior, the what you wear starts to have higher expectations. Um, So that's what we want to wear to job fairs. Um, so let's see here. Got to go back to my banners. Now, while you're there, okay, so we found out where these job fairs were. You know, um, we know when we're going to go. We know what to wear. What should I do at a job fair? Well, first thing that you're going to want to do before you even go to the job fair is you really want to research what's going on, know what kind of event it is, know what kind of companies are there, and research the companies. You A lot of job fairs. I know when we do ours, the ClearedJobs.Net job fairs, you can look online and see on that page what companies are there and what jobs that they're recruiting for specifically at that job fair. Now, that doesn't mean that's all they're recruiting for, but it does mean if it says that that's what they're looking for, they're prepared to answer those questions. So certainly, if you do those things, that's a job fair. That's a niche job fair you need to be at because they paid a lot of money to be there and they want to talk to people with your skills. Now, if you don't do those things, that doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't go. No, not at all. Look at the company. Look at the other things that they do because the companies are also there to talk about their whole company in general. So you want to research so when you get to the job fair, um, you're smart. You can have your conversation about that instead of just saying what can your company do for me. That's the wrong thing to lead with. Don't say what does your company do or what can your company do for me. You're much better off saying I see that you do this. I'd like to learn more. So you can check the company out on the event page. You should look at them on LinkedIn, look at their company page and everything like that. Something else when you're at the job fair, remember your elevator pitch and then don't use it. Sounds weird, right? Yeah, remember your elevator pitch. If you go to tap class, they're gonna have you practice your elevator pitch. You know, nice concise thing about your star statements of what I do and how I can help and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, good. Practice that and then don't use it because if you don't use it, it's no longer a script and it just kind of stays in your brain and it'll come out at the right time. But you don't want to drive the conversation with that because it sounds very stilted sometimes. So remember your elevator pitch. But when you talk to people at these job fairs, your real goal is to have a conversation. And that kind of ties back into researching the company because you can ask the types of questions about their company that they're going to be willing to answer, and it can become a conversation. Then everybody just feels a little bit more comfortable. Um, when you get to a job fair, again, in-person events, well, actually, in person or virtual, I suggest you talk to everybody. But particularly these in-person events, you've gotten dressed up, you drove across town, you got a parking spot. When you get inside there, talk to everybody that's there. But if you've done your research, you're probably going to have some A-list companies like I really want to talk to these people, and I really want to talk to those people. Go to those companies last. Shake the rust off. Go there, talk to the companies that that they don't do what you do because you've already researched them, and then just ask questions like, "How's it going? I see that you do this type thing." Just get your body used to talking to people and answering questions about yourself. So when you actually get to the companies you really want to talk to, you've kind of gotten yourself, in the right frame of reference for having those conversations. So go to your A-list companies last when you do those things. Couple of other things to think about when you go to job fairs. If it's a job fair that lasts for a long time, a lot of times there might be a lot of people that rush at the very beginning. So conversations might feel like they're shorter because there's a long line. If you wait till the last third of a job fair, a lot of times you start to be having a chance to have longer conversations at that point in time. um, that could be a big benefit, but I wouldn't wait too long because to be honest with you, sometimes if a job fair goes for 5 or 6 hours, some companies start to pack their stuff up the last half hour. As a company, we try to encourage them not to, but every once in a while they do. um, the other piece is before you go and do this research, if it's a company that you really want to speak with and you find somebody on LinkedIn that's talking about that, make sure that you kind of connect with them because a lot of times they might tell you, hey, the program manager for this part of the program is going to be on that at that job fair from 12 to 2 or from 3 to 5 or whatever, because sometimes those program managers kind of pop in and out. So making that connection early can maybe help you to figure out what's the best time to show up. um, so those are the types of things that you should be doing, when you get to the job fair. Um, take your time, talk to everybody, and again, the farther out you are before you transition, the less pressure that you have, so you can have better conversations. Now you've gone to the job fair, you did your thing, you talked to people, you had you submitted your resumes online to the you know prior to registering for the job fair and everything like that. Post event follow up. What are you going to do? Find those companies that you talk to. If you didn't get a chance to research them, find them online, check their openings. You're doing more career intelligence, just like we talk about in the intel world in the military. There's signals intelligence and human intelligence, and there's geo intelligence. Well, there's career intelligence. That means learning about the companies, learning about what they do, learning about where their recruiters are, who their hiring managers are, and that kind of stuff. So gather all that information, write it down, save it, connect with people on LinkedIn, follow those companies on their social media, especially if you look on their social media, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever, and you see that they're pretty active. If they're in your business, if they're in your wheelhouse, you definitely want to follow them. And then anybody that you had a good conversation with, any recruiter that you had, especially if they give you a business card, you definitely want to follow back up with them. Send them an email as a connection piece. If you had a discussion with a hiring manager or a recruiter about a specific position or a specific field, and they might have said, and they might have said, yeah, you might be a good fit for this opportunity. Reach out and offer to send them a more specific and tailored resume. And we're going to talk about resumes at the end of this little discussion here in a few minutes. But you hear this a lot at TAP class and everything, that you want to have a specific resume too. The resume you have at a job fair is going to be more of a general thing. It's going to talk about all of your skills and everything like that, what you do. But if they say that they do a specific project, you might want to say, hey, I know you've got my general resume. Do you mind if I send you a specific resume? Those recruiters are going to love that. And that's going to be a good piece. So then follow up with, here's a resume that's specific to the type of job descriptions that they were pointing you towards. Um, so the other thing about, I guess the last thing about the follow up piece, and like this is to not get discouraged. If you talk to companies and they say things like, I need you to apply online, that's not always the brush off that some people think that it is. First of all, government contractors, they got to follow these things called Office of Federal Contractor Compliance, OFCCP. They've got to capture all their applications in a certain spot. And so a lot of companies, that's the way they do it. All the applications go in one spot. Another thing is bigger companies, especially, they might be there recruiting for certain programs, but they've got lots of things that are open. So the recruiter that you're speaking with might not be able to answer the questions for the program that you're a good fit for, but she or he might know that program does exist, and so they might say, well, I think that you definitely should, go ahead and apply online type thing. If you do apply online and you can get that person's information, that's, again, you follow back up and say, hey, Susan, I took your advice. I applied for this position online. I just wanted to let you know, thank you for your help. Maybe Susan will remember you. And she, at that point, can then look over to the recruiter who handles those programs and kind of alert them to say that, hey, I talked to this person at the last job fair type thing, and they seem like a pretty decent person. So so that is the job fairs. We talked about the different types of events. We talked about, in person versus virtual. We talked about why and when you should attend. 12 months is when you start to attend for careers intelligence. 3 months when you start to attend for more results. Uniform is okay if you need to, but wearing civilian attire is preferred, because it gets you out of that frame of mind. And then when you're there, research before you go, talk to everybody, A-list companies last, and then follow up. So that's our stuff for job fairs. I don't know if there's any comments. We could, if there's comments that are in here, if we don't get a chance to answer them in the comments section, we can always get back to folks as well. But now we're going to go ahead and jump over to our last section of the day, which is resume review. So Military Mondays here at ClearedJobs.net, we do resume reviews, and the way this works is, transitioning veterans can send us your resume. You send us your resume, and if we choose to use yours, what we'll do is we'll take out the personal information, and we'll do some real live reviews here on LinkedIn and other social media platforms. Because, like I said, that the advice you sometimes get about resumes can sound very sterile, and a lot of times it just doesn't translate too much. So I think looking at real resumes, we can highlight the things that are the goods and the bads, and we're going to do that. So Ashley, you want to throw our first one up there, which is from Joe Jobseeker. All right, so Joe Jobseeker's resume, you can see it right on your screen right now. That's laid out in 2 pages, so you can see that there's 2 pages of resume, which is good. And then you want to go ahead and start from the first page there, Ashley. So some things I really like about this resume is I really like, first of all, the name and stuff like that at the top is good. I think if you've got a LinkedIn profile, that's great to put it up there. That's a good example of making it easy, particularly if your resume profile kind of matches this resume, so it's going to reinforce it. Not so great if your LinkedIn profile is just a big blank LinkedIn profile. The summary section is not bad. I mean, summary sections. I talked about this last month too. Summary sections can be kind of tricky because you can have sometimes you have a chance to end up with too many fluff words. This one doesn't have too many fluff words. It's got some things that are very specifically really good. Putting the clearance right up front up there is a good piece. Talking about IT infrastructure. But what I really like about this, I like the way that they did their key skills that are up there. I always tell people that 9, 12 at the max. I like the way these are bulleted out, so it's real easy for a recruiter or a hiring manager to see the types of things that they've done. Some of these things that are really good: cloud information configuration management, even cybersecurity. The more specific you can be, the better. I do tell people to want to shy away from things like strategic leadership and oversight, and certainly stay away from soft skills like team player or very punctual, those kinds of things, because that's kind of expected of you. Um, but this is good. And then the formal education. Education is one of those things that can go in a couple different places. It can go at the top like this, or it can go at the very end also. Um, if your degree is relatively recent, or if it's very specific, like in this case, a master's in cyber operations, that's fine to put it right up here. I think that's a good thing up here. If this person's formal education had been a bachelor's degree in social sciences from 1992, I would just put that at the very bottom, because that wouldn't make too much of a difference, other than being a bachelor's degree. So where this is at, this is good. And I like this. If you scroll down just a touch, Ashley, the overview of key attributions. Not sure that's the best word, but still, I like the way they did this, because it talks little bit about um, what they did with the bulleted project management, leadership, IT development. It kind of explained things, which that's the first I'd seen it done that way. Um, and I don't hate it. I kind of like it. I think the only piece I would want to say is maybe again a little bit more specifics that are inside there. But other than that, I think it looks good. Um, but then we get to professional experience. So here I've got a little bit of critique. So Ashley, if you want to kind of highlight the professional experience part, the scroll down just a touch there. There we go. Um, so first of all, um, what you want to do inside here is I see a couple things like mentioned Army 365 collaboration. Seems to be one of the big projects that this person worked on. Um, and I think it's a cloud type based server program. Army 365 might be something that is very uh, it just jumps off the page into your brain of exactly what that is, and it might even be something that everybody in the Army knows. But it might not be something that everybody in the private sector knows, even the recruiters who might be looking for cloud-based type things. So if you're going to have a specific program like this, this is where you might want to start listing, some of those things from your and we're going to scroll down at the very end here to her technical or this person's technical section, which was great. But you might want to start putting some like technical stuff kind of leading with it up front, because when you start listing programs that maybe not everybody knows about, it's it's not that you're confusing the recruiter or the hiring manager, but they might just scroll right on past that. Because a recruiter, especially a recruiter who's not exactly the hiring manager, is looking for keywords. Keywords, key phrases, because the hiring manager said, "Find me resumes that say things like this," right? So maybe this recruiter saw your thing with your resume that had things like, cloud information systems up at the top, which we looked at, and now they're looking for more specifics. So it's just a small critique, but I do think that this is an example of something um, that you might want to try to explain just a little bit better with more technical stuff if you've got it. And I think this person probably does have it too. So the one that's right below there too, cybersecurity branch instructor writer. um, this is something that can be tough for people in the military, because whether you call it an instructor or a curriculum developer, a lot of times the military has a tendency to take somebody who does the business, sends you off to the schoolhouse either to teach the business or to create the curriculum to teach the business. So you're kind of out of the loop on some stuff. And so this is a couple of years that the person wasn't doing what they were doing. Um, the very first bullet talked about some things about doing some creating some courses and stuff like that. What I would say is that you want to get really specific about what kind of courses they were. you know like the topics included and kind of list some of those topics that were included. And if those topics, especially those topics, are in the same wheelhouse as what you're doing, like cloud information type stuff, at that point, you're now kind of reinforcing every time they look down, they're seeing more keywords and key phrases that just reinforce that you're doing what they want you to do. Um, Ash, if you could scroll down to the bottom of the resume now of this one. All right. Now, see this, I love this information here. I think it might have been even better if it had been up towards the top, at least some of it. But whenever you have a technical job or technical skill sets, this is exactly what you want to have inside there. So you can see operate, the certifications is huge. Recruiters and hiring managers, when they search for resumes by keywords and key phrases, they can search, like certifications is one of the easiest things to search for. If I type in CompTIA, it's going to bring me back resumes that are all in the right thing. AWS or certified cloud practitioner. Those are all definitely good things to have inside there. And then all of those different like networking, LAN, VPN, DNS, firewall, router. Those are yes, put all that stuff in there. This is great. My only suggestion is you might want to. I would think about maybe moving this up towards the top, using some of these pieces here instead of some of those not those 9 or 12 bullets we had up at the top where we had those key skills. Pull some of this stuff in here, and you also want to move some of these words. This is where this should be in your bullet of your of the main part of your resume too. When it says that you worked on this project with Army 365, which of these things did you use in Army 365? List them up there. Don't be afraid to list some of those same key technical words more than once on your resume, because when you put them up with your in your employment history, you're really painting the picture for that hiring manager and that recruiter of, okay, well, what did you really do when you were doing that? Because this is all the technical language that hiring manager is gonna want to see. You got to remember the resume gets you the interview. It doesn't get you the job. It gets you the interview. But the way, especially at larger corporations, the recruiter goes through, finds a whole bunch, goes through lots and lots and lots of resumes to find a stack of maybe 10 or 12 to then present to the hiring manager, who then might say, well, bring me these 4 or 5 people in for an interview. So once you get to the point where that your resume has the basics and gets past the recruiter into the person who does the business, the more you can explain. Don't be afraid to get a little bit technical on there, about what it is that you did and how you did it and what tools you used to do it. So this is great stuff on the resume. It's not in a horrible spot because it's very well laid out, but I would think about moving it up more towards the front and inside the main body of the resume, if that helps out. So that was Joe Job Seeker. Actually, let's take a look at Jane Job Seeker. And then this will be the last one for today. So while she's pulling that up, but when we're all done, I'm going to give you guys the email address if you want to send in your resumes, to have us review them. These two we're doing today are both very technical, but they don't have to be technical. You can send us. You can be a Lance Corporal coming out of the Marine Corps who drove a truck. You can be a nuclear submarine reactors officer for the Navy. You can be a cybersecurity person, intel person, whatever. Send us your resume. We're happy to take a look at those things. So, um, really briefly, we're going to go ahead and go through Jane Job Seeker's resume here. A lot of it was very similar. You can see education and certifications were similar in the same spot. Professional summary was similar. Some of this formatting is off. This is the way we got it. Pretty sure that this wasn't the way Jane Job Seeker it looked when she first put it together. But you might want to take a look at your Word document and print it before you scan it and send it to some folks. Um, some things I just want to highlight on this one. If you scroll down, her technical competencies are a little higher up. So this is kind of what I was mentioning on the last one. These technical competencies are great, um, and they're moved up towards the top. I would just think about maybe just from a aesthetic standpoint, you know, kind of blocking it off so it's a little bit easier to read instead of this centered type thing. But that's great to have that stuff up there to jump out at the recruiter. Hey, this is what I do, and they're already starting with an idea of Jane Job Seeker does what I want someone to do. So that's great. Um, Some tips here for professional experience. She listed, U.S. Navy from 1998 to 2020. It can be so tough to capture, a 20-year career or 20 plus year career in the military on a resume. I don't suggest doing it this way. I suggest basically, you know, each one of her blocks here, like information security systems and course manager type thing, list your years there so it can show the progression. And again, you typically only have to go back about 10 years. I mean, if you've been doing the same exact thing for 15 years on the same exact program, that's one thing. But if you've got a typical military career where you started off here and went there and then you did this and came back here, listed up in the blocks like this. Um, she had some similar issues there with being an instructor. Again, issue meaning that's not her fault, but you weren't doing the business. Um, but another similar piece here that from the just like in the previous, a lot of acronyms in here. If you look at HIDS and IDS, um, I think that that's like an intrusion detection type thing that she must have been working on. But I would say, like the word, I didn't find intrusion detection in here anywhere, but I saw HIDS and I saw, other types of things that alluded to that. You definitely want to put intrusion because you might have a recruiter who's just looking for people with quote intrusion detection. So think of the ways to say things, list their titles and their acronyms both in your resume so that when people search for things, they might search for it one way or they might search for it another way, but they're always going to find you. So if you've got things that can be spelled out and can be acronym using an acronym, then do that. Same thing with like HBSS and ACAS and VRAM. Lots and lots of military acronyms in here, which probably mean a lot to you. Probably meant a lot to your boss. They might have looked great on a fit rep or an evaluation because everybody knew what you were talking about. But you got to remember, sometimes the Navy and the Marine Corps and the Air Force and the Army don't even use the same acronyms. Let alone when you start getting into, the private sector, even the DoD, even government contractors, they might not. And you could be going through recruiters who have a more limited knowledge of what it is you do as well. So you want to play to the recruiters and you also want to play to the hiring managers all on the same resume. Um, and if you scroll down, I'm going to kind of end this one up. There's not much more to say on this one, except I wanted to show that the way it came in, um, the second page had some weird page breaks to it. Um, so when you're setting up your resume, you want to, when you're messing with your Word document, this is where I tell people you don't need to get too much help with your resumes. As far as I wouldn't pay anybody to write your resume, but I would ask for people to help you as far as formatting to make sure things like this is where page 2 should have started, but you had 2 more bullets that fell off to the second page. And there's plenty of room on the bottom of this. So just looking at it, because once it gets out there, it becomes kind of goofy. Honestly, this kind of mistake is if you have the technical skills, this kind of mistake is not going to ruin you, but it's not going to help you either. So you want to make things as smooth as possible. So we've gone a little bit long today, so I apologize for going long, but it's some good information, I think. We did our resume Monday. Again, if you want to send us your resume, you can send it to Military Monday at ClearedJobs.net. And like I said, we pull out the personal information. We'll send you a message to you, say, hey, we're going to use your resume, so you'll know. Our next Military Monday is going to be like first or second week of May. So you've got some time to send that in. But please send it in. Also, what you can do is if you're interested in job fairs, we do have some job fairs coming up. Our next job fair is just in 3 days. It's in Tyson's Corner, Virginia. It's an in-person event for all clearance levels. So, whatever your clearance level, you can show up. 20 something companies there. Tons of companies are going to be there. And just to kind of throw it out there, we've got the one after that is in May, and it's a poly only event in Maryland outside of Fort Meade. And then we've got a virtual event later on in May 19th, um, which is just for companies who are looking to hire folks in the Southwestern United States. So Arizona, New Mexico, California, places like that. So if you go to ClearedJobs.net, you can go click on Cleared Jobs, job fairs, and it'll give you the whole list of everything that's going on. And finally, if you just want to connect with me, you can hit me up. I'm Bob Wheeler. I'm from ClearedJobs.net. Tomorrow is Tuesday. I'm going to be at Fort Bragg actually for the AFCEA TechNet event. So if you're in the Fort Bragg area and you want to swing by, I think it's called Iron Mike's. I'll be there for the morning. Do a little presentation at 1:00, and then on Thursday I'll be at our job fair in Tyson's Corner. So if you see me, stop by and say hi. And if you don't see me, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to help. So, like I said, we've gone a little bit more than 5 minutes. But that is really it for today. So I wish you guys a happy transition, and keep fighting a good fight. And life is good on the other side. So keep plugging away. Thanks a lot.